Usually I'm pumped to talk running back rankings, but Bijan Robinson's on bye this week, ladies and gentlemen. So, I'll try to get through this. But starting off tier 1, we will have CMC. Tier by himself, not going to waste your time. He's averaging over 26 points per game. Dropping down to tier 2, we will go Austin Eckler. With Eckler, had him as that buy low guy earlier in the year, simply when Mike Williams out for the season. You know this man's getting flooded with targets. And yeah, great offense, ton of target volume, averaging 18 points per game, 23.5 point implied team total. Travis Etienne will be our next running back here with Travis Etienne. Brutal game last week. Obviously, just a complete collapse of this Jacksonville Jaguars offense. That was against the 49ers defense. Now, the Titans have a good run defense. Obviously, should be a little bit of a different game environment, though. Now, dropping down to our next tier, this is where things actually start getting a little difficult. And I am not going to lie, this is probably a crazy ranking, and this is probably way too high. I am going to put Jahmyr Gibbs at 4. With Jahmyr Gibbs, he's averaging about 5 targets per game. It feels crazy that we have him here. Just please let me know in the comment section. Who should we have ahead of Jahmyr Gibbs? Because clearly he shouldn't be this high. But he's averaging about 5 targets per game. We saw that this past week, he will get involved at the goal line now. And on top of this, you have an implied team total of almost 29 points going up against the Chicago Bears. So you're telling me we have a running back that is a top receiver in one of the best offenses in the NFL, running behind one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, in one of the best matchups you can find. Plus, he has goal line usage now. Like I said, it seems crazy to have him this high. Please let me know in the comment section who I should put him behind, because I feel like I'm losing my mind here. Josh Jacobs will be our next bag. Now, with Josh Jacobs going up against Miami, you only have a 17-point implied team total. You're averaging only 14.6 points per game compared to Jahmyr Gibbs at 17.5. Now, of course, Jacobs is going to see more touches overall, but the issue is this offense is supposed to score 11 points less. And on top of that, Jacobs is going to have fewer targets out of the backfield. Breece Hall will be our next guy at 6. You have a very tough matchup going up against Buffalo. Yes, I know Javonte Williams just did quite well, but still don't love the Buffalo matchup. You have a 16.5 point implied team total, so should be one of the worst offenses in the NFL. We've come to expect that from the New York Jets. And Breece Hall currently averaging about 13.5 points per game. So Breece Hall is actually averaging far fewer points per game than any other running back in this tier. Plus, he has a toughish matchup. But with that, you have Michael Carter getting cut, so maybe Breece Hall sees more involvement when this team's trailing by multiple touchdowns in the second half. Devon Achane will be our next running back here at 7. With Achane, he's coming back this week. He's averaging 25.5 points per game. He is number 1 in the NFL right now in points per game. Now, of course, it's going to come crashing down. The efficiency can't keep up for Achane. There's no way in hell that happens. What you're hoping for is you're hoping the volume gets a tick up while the efficiency comes down and it ends up counteracting itself. Now, if you are looking at the matchup, you're going up against the Raiders. Massive favorites in this game, pretty much the largest spread of the week. And you have an implied team total over 30 points. Right now, Vegas sportsbooks are telling us that the Miami Dolphins are going to score about 30.5 points this week. Clearly, they'll be running the ball in the second half. And then David Montgomery will be that next guy at 8. Yes, we can't just say Gibbs is fully taken over. Montgomery's still a great running back in his own right. And going back to what we were talking about previously, beautiful matchup. And this is actually a revenge game here for David Montgomery. Now, dropping down to our next running back, we will have Raheem Mostert at 9. Pretty much the same explanation that you have with Devon Achane, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery. It seems nuts to have 4 of our top 10 running backs this week coming from the same backfield. Please let me know in the comment section if this has ever happened before. And like I said, I feel like I'm losing my mind, but you have a 30.5 point implied team total for the Dolphins. Raheem Mostert's averaging 19 points per game. So he's the top 3 running back right now, essentially in fantasy. We are expecting him to come back down to earth with HN coming back in. But these are statement rankings. Please start all the running backs in Miami. Start all the running backs in Detroit. DeAndre Swift will be that next back. Now with DeAndre Swift averaging about 14.5 points per game, you're going up against KC. And Typically, you'd expect the Eagles to be big favorites. You'd expect the Eagles to have an implied team total around 27, 28 points. Then implied team total is down at 21.5. I mean, clearly this is the best Kansas City Chiefs defense that Mahomes ever had. Vegas is pricing it in that way. And this game isn't necessarily supposed to be some massive shootout as you'd expect it to be. Kenneth Walker will be our next running back. Kenneth Walker averaging 15 points per game. That's actually more than DeAndre Swift. And what's very interesting is you actually have the Seattle Seahawks with a higher implied team total than the Philadelphia Eagles this week with 23.5 going up against the Rams. My issue with this is if you're going to be looking at what you have with Kenneth Walker, now Zach Charbonnet is seeing literally every single snap on third down, and Zach Charbonnet is seeing every single snap in the 2-minute drill. Joe Mixon will be our next running back at 12. Joe Mixon will be much higher than this in our rest of season rankings. Right now, if you look at his underdog pick'em for the Thursday night game, he's at more than less than 80.5 total yards going up against the Ravens. It's just a very tough matchup. You have an implied team total of 21 points for the Bengals. Mixon's averaging 13.3 points per game. So I will be higher on Mixon going forward than I am this week. It is just one of the worst matchups you can find. Now, going over to Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry is supposed to be one of the worst offenses in the NFL this week. Implied team total is 16.5 points. He's only averaging about 14 points per game. Obviously, you're going to see some massive spikes with Derrick Henry, right? I mean, a few of these weeks, he'll be the best running back in fantasy. And the other weeks, Tajay Spears will see more snaps because the Tennessee Titans get boat raced. That could possibly be one of these weeks. And you know what? I'm actually going to move him behind Saquon Barkley as our next guy. Now, with Barkley, clearly the issue is you're going up against Washington and you have a 13.5 point implied team total. The New York Giants not only are the worst offense in the NFL, but it's not even remotely close. There is no second place team. If we were making a tier list of best offenses in the NFL, we'd have about 5 empty tiers and the New York Giants at the very bottom of that. So even if Barkley's getting 100% of this offense, it is so hard to project him here where you have pretty much no touchdown upside. And of course, I'm someone who drafted a ton of Saquon Barkley this season. I promise you I would not have done it if I knew the Giants would be this bad. Now, Tony Pollard will be our last running back in this tier at 15. 100%, I understand this seeming like a aggressive ranking when it comes to Tony Pollard based off how bad he's been. Tony Pollard's averaging 12.5 points per game. That is lower than any other running back in this tier. But at the same time, the Dallas Cowboys have an implied team total of 26 points. You're going up against the Carolina Panthers, which have been the worst rush defense in the entire NFL, or up there alongside the Denver Broncos, of course. You have a consistent workload right now if you're looking at the underdog pick'em. You have Tony Pollard at 61.5 rushing yards. That's higher than someone like Mixon. If you compare that to Mixon, you have Mixon at 54.5. So, I mean, based off these expectations as well, I think you probably have to take Pollard here with his receiving usage. And of course, if you wanted to check out any of those pick'ems over on Underdog, if you wanted to say, Mason, this is clownish, I'm taking the fewer than 61.5 rushing yards on Pollard, you do you. You can find that link in the comment section in the description. Promo code FLOCK, get a 100% deposit match, plus our rest of season fantasy football rankings and tiers. And code FLOCK is also going to get you a Joe Burrow special pick'em, more than less than half a passing yard for Thursday night. Now, dropping down to our next tier, we're going to go Javonte Williams. Javonte actually only averaging 11.2 fantasy points per game this season, which will be pretty much the lowest mark of any running back in this range. But with that being said, you're seeing the usage of Javonte fundamentally change. Javonte's seeing more and more and more of this backfield as he gets healthy. The matchup against Minnesota is kind of whatever. You have about a 23-point implied team total for Javonte. Now, going over to Pacheco. Tough matchup against the Eagles. I mean, you're averaging 12.9 points per game. I probably will have Pacheco ranked higher than this in a lot of other spots, but here it's just going to be a little tough given the Eagles matchup. Brian Robinson will be in here at 17, and if you are looking at Brian Robinson, he'll be lower than this in our rest of season rankings. I hope I'm wrong because I drafted a ton of Brian Robinson this year. He's averaging about 14.2 points per game. Obviously, coming off a game where he just saw so much upside as the receiving option, but also it was a beautiful matchup against Washington. But that's not something that's easy to project going forward. What I will say is you're about 10-point favorites over the Giants here. So if you are 10-point favorites over the Giants, probably have to go ahead and start it. Maybe you can get to 15 rushing attempts this week. Now, James Conner will be our next running back. With James Conner, a 22-point implied team total for the Arizona Cardinals. Pretty much the highest that we've seen all years once we got Kyler Murray back in this offense. You're going up against the Houston Texans. I mean, I am expecting that the Texans get out to a large lead in this game. Quick side note, I actually like Tank Dell for more than 49.5 receiving yards on Underdog this week. But James Conner has shown that he is going to be a running back that gets involved as a receiver. Now, going over to Rachaad White, he will be a running back that's ranked significantly higher in our rest of season rankings than he is here. Rachaad White has averaged almost 15 points per game. This is more than Pacheco, more than Javonte, more than Brian Robinson, more than Henry, more than Pollard. I mean, he's more than Mixon. He's up there with like DeAndre Swift. Now, the issue is you're going up against the 49ers defense that just made the Jacksonville Jaguars look like an XFL team. While Rachaad White can typically overcome tough matchups given his involvement as a receiver, which is why in a full BBR format, you're still going to need to be starting him this week. You have an implied team total of about 14.75 points for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This goes to show how good this 49ers defense is. I mean, right now you have Rachaad White at 44.5 rushing yards for his Underdog pick'em. Aaron Jones will be our next running back in here at 21. With Aaron Jones, I think we just need to reset our expectations, right? 2 weeks ago, he went out, he had the touchdown. I was saying, Aaron Jones is back, baby. We can go through, we can start this guy every single week. He gave us a dud this past week, but if you look at the underlying snap data, it's really remained consistent. I mean, back-to-back weeks now, he's seeing about 55% of the snaps in Green Bay. But clearly, A.J. Dillon is going to have a pretty large role in this offense. Aaron Jones is kind of like Rachaad White in that he is getting there just based off his receiving role. Aaron Jones is averaging about 12 points per game. The difference between the running backs is Aaron Jones is an old man, right? So, I mean, the efficiency just hasn't been there so far this season. Now, Devin Singletary will be our next running back at 22. I am unsure if Dameon Pierce is going to play this week. If Dameon Pierce plays this week, Devin Singletary probably falls down to the tier below. I would still expect Singletary to be the lead back in this backfield. However, I probably wouldn't start him until we actually get to see what the usage looks like. If Dameon Pierce were to miss, then Devin Singletary should be higher than this in these rankings, as he is in a good offense, coming off a game with a crazy workload. Now, my only issues that we would have with Devin Singletary is the fact that this is not a running back that is catching the ball out of the backfield, right? So if he's not seeing target volume, you are really just hoping that he goes out there and gets you a rushing touchdown. Now, our next guy will be Ty Chandler at 23. Ty Chandler, beautiful matchup going up against the Denver Broncos. You should have no Alexander Mattison. With that being said, Joshua Dobbs as a quarterback that can go out there and run the ball himself. Probably not going to be checking the ball down at a very high rate to the running back out of this backfield. We don't know if Ty Chandler's any good. I mean, we'll see this week. He has the prime matchup. But given this matchup, I think that you do probably have to put him as that must-start guy. Jerome Ford at 24. I mean, he's clearly the lead back in Cleveland, but I want to reiterate what we've said all along. He is in a committee with Kareem Hunt, and I do not expect Jerome Ford to be a good enough running back to be able to overcome a running back by committee in this offense. So if Kareem Hunt still continues to see looks inside the 10-yard line, if Kareem Hunt still continues to steal touchdowns, it is tough to be super excited about Ford. Gus Edwards will be our next running back here at 25. I mean, with Gus Edwards, it's been much better than this so far this season, right? I mean, this guy is just a touchdown machine. Now, my issue is similar to Jerome Ford. This is going to be a running back that's in a committee. We got the report earlier this week as well that Keaton Mitchell is actually going to have a larger role in this game. Now, I don't think he's going to have a larger role than Gus Edwards, or we would have ranked Keaton Mitchell ahead of Gus Edwards. And you don't really know what a larger role means because ultimately this is someone that is seeing about 5% of the snaps currently. So if he's going from like 5% of the snaps and you're getting that bumped up to 15%. That's still technically a larger role, and it still doesn't have too big of an impact. He could also take that from Justice Hill. We just don't know yet. But regardless of the situation, probably not super excited to start him until we actually, I'm probably never going to be excited to start him in a PPR format. Now, James Cook will be that next guy, 26. I'm going to continue to be hesitant on James Cook early in the week just because I don't know if Fournette's playing. If Fournette plays, I would expect it to go back to being a 3-man running back by committee like we saw earlier in the year. If Fournette misses yet again, I would say that James Cook needs to rise up these rankings. Obviously, Cook, not someone with a massive role in the red zone. And on top of that, with James Cook, this is a running back that does have a toughish matchup going up against the Jets, averaging about 11.8 points per game right now. Now, dropping down to our next tier, we will go with Darrell Henderson at 27. If you are looking at Darrell Henderson, should have one more week as the starting running back for Los Angeles. It's a decent matchup going up against Seattle, where you have an implied team total of about 22.5 points. But Darrell Henderson is not a super talented back, and he is splitting the backfield with Royce Freeman. But the offense should be much better this week than it's been with no Stafford. Our next two backs will be Jalen Warren, Najee Harris. While I understand both running backs get there this past week with rushing touchdowns, right now you have Jalen Warren averaging 11.2 points per game, Najee Harris averaging 10.4. This week, it is going to be a very tough matchup going up against the Cleveland Browns. Against the Browns, you have a 16.5 point implied team total for the Pittsburgh Steelers here. Don't have much interest at all in going through and starting either one of these running backs who continue to split the backfield 50-50. Chuba Hubbard will be our next guy at 30 with Chuba Hubbard going up against a very tough Dallas defense. I mean, it looks like Hubbard is the starter, but he is right now sitting with an implied team total about 15.5 points. So, I mean, we can sit here and go, okay, yeah, the Jets offense is horrible, but Breece Hall is still great. So I guess start Breece Hall, right? Or we can sit here and go, yeah, the Giants offense is horrible, but Saquon Barkley is still great. You start Saquon Barkley. We can't sit here and go, oh, the Panthers offense is horrible. Chuba Hubbard's great. No, Chuba Hubbard's not great, right? This is just a guy. Maybe if he was in a better situation, he could go out there and produce. It's just one of the worst situations you could find. Khalil Herbert / Deonta Foreman will be our next guy at 31. I don't know who it's going to be. I think they're probably going to be in a committee. You are massive dogs against the Detroit Lions. I mean, right now the Lions are favored by like 10, 11 points in this game. So probably not going to be looking to run the ball in the second half either. We'll go Kareem Hunt at 32 with Hunt. Frustrating, not getting involved as a receiver whatsoever. He keeps saving our best ball teams by just scoring these random touchdowns. So it is nice that he is giving us a little bit of a floor for all those teams who drafted him on Underdog. But from a ceiling perspective, I don't necessarily know how excited we are. And then Zach Charbonnet at 33. So running back that I like as an upside shot if Kenneth Walker were to go down. If Kenneth Walker were to go down, I want to say Zach Charbonnet could turn into a league-winning running back, and I think I would immediately rank him as an RB1. However, with healthy Kenneth Walker, Walker's still the guy in first and second downs, and Zach Charbonnet is just exclusively a third down back. But I think that should be it for this video. Again, if you want to go through and say, Mason, you're way too high on Pollard and take fewer than 61.5 rushing yards, if you want to agree with me and go, Mason, yeah, let's take the more than 49.5 receiving yards for Tank Dell. You can find that link to Underdog in the comment section in the description. Promo code FLOCK, 100% a pause and match, plus our rest of season fantasy football rankings and tiers, and a Joe Burrow special pick of more than less than half a total yard. But I think that's all I have for you, ladies and gentlemen. Really do appreciate you. Really hope you have a great day, and hope we get to see you out in the live stream later tonight.